My son got married and paid his respects to his parents. But the woman sitting next to my husband was someone else. I had just discovered that my husband, who had been with me for 30 years, already had a girlfriend. When I confronted him, he looked at me with disgust. What common language could there be between an uneducated housewife like you and me? The other woman held my husband's arm tightly, looking very proud. You've been occupying the magpie's nest for so many years. It's time to give up your position. Even my own son, whom I had doted on for years, raised his hand and pushed me off the stage. He had no idea how many nights I cried myself to sleep because Aunt Diana couldn't be my mother. Why don't you just die? He shouted. I collapsed in despair and died. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn, returned to 30 years ago. The young version of my husband looked at me with grievance. Callista, I promise this is the last time. I'll definitely pass the exam next year. If you're worried, let's go and get the certificate now. Tear up my admission letter and support an unfaithful man? I shook my head firmly. How could I be stupid again after dying once? During the wedding, the groom confessed to the bride. Callista, you must take good care of Brian after you get married and strive to become a college student's wife as soon as possible. That's a must. Brian is the best student in our village. Next time, I will definitely pass the imperial examination, he said. The villagers surrounded us, cheering and teasing. I was pushed forward by some naughty children and bumped into Brian. The familiar touch made my hair stand on end. I was alive again. Looking around, I saw familiar faces from my memories. Brian was no longer gray-haired. It was incredible. I had returned to the day we got our marriage certificate. I must work hard to get into college next year and take you to the city to live a good life. I will never let you down and will never betray you, he said, but the past and present intertwined. Brian, who appeared sincere before me, was a devil in disguise. I quickly retreated like lightning. Who wants to marry you? I said. The kind-hearted village head's wife was startled and patted me gently. Ouch, the bride is just shy. She says one thing but means another. The villagers laughed in unison and teased me from all directions. Callista's heart has always been on Brian. Even the newborns in our village know that. What's there to be shy about? Marriage is a personal choice. No one will laugh at you. There's only one college student in our village. Callista, you must cherish him. In my previous life, Brian and I were childhood sweethearts. I was deeply attracted to this weak yet handsome neighbor. I lived frugally but was generous to him. I even dragged my loving parents into becoming financial support for him. Brian's widowed mother saw that I had a good family background and was efficient. So she came to propose marriage. I'm not bragging, but a good girl like Callista, except for my Brian, there's really no one in the surrounding villages who matches her. She said, good child, the biggest regret of my life is not having a biological daughter. If you marry into our family, even Brian can't surpass you. Amid her sweet words, I nodded shyly. I had been a free nanny for 30 years, only to find out it was all a scam. Since God gave me another chance, I must turn the tide. My mother told me to go with Brian to get the marriage certificate. I returned to calm down and continue studying. Brian frowned and glanced at his wristwatch. His impatient tone was exactly the same as in my previous life. My parents were known as hard-working people in the village. They saved up a generous dowry for me. With that dowry, Brian, who was penniless, studied hard and finally got into university. After graduating, he took advantage of the times and became successful. The crowd surrounded us as we walked toward the township office. In my previous life, I got the certificate without hesitation and married into Brian's family without ceremony. I thought Brian only cared about studying and had no room for romance. But it turned out all his love was reserved for his white moonlight. Diana. Every day of the year was an anniversary for them. Every moment spent with her was unforgettable. But being with someone you don't love means wasting your life in pain. In this life, I will make him feel that pain every day. Seeing that everyone misunderstood, I shouted, everyone, listen to me. Everyone looked confused. Brian looked annoyed. Okay, Callista, my time is really limited. Don't make a fuss. I've already agreed to get the marriage certificate. Everyone heard it. What else do you want? Brian's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. The breeze blew, and the Dacron jacket he wore carried a fresh grassy scent. I had washed it for him. Enduring the icy river water. In my past life, relying on my love for him, Brian saw himself as a god. A mere smile from him was considered a gift to me. I now understand that the most important skill for a woman is knowing how to speak up. Looking at his proud jawline, I jumped onto a large rock and stared into his eyes with disdain. Brian, I never said I wanted to marry you. The words stunned everyone. After all, in my past life, I had chased Brian around day and night. With his mother's exaggerations, everyone, from the elderly to toddlers, believed I loved Brian more than my own life and couldn't live without him. People thought we were a match made in heaven. No other eligible bachelor even dared look my way. I waved my hand dismissively, and everyone heard me clearly. Comrade Brian, I used to chase after you because I was blinded by emotions and too soft-hearted. Every time you hinted at your family's poverty and lack of tuition, I felt guilty for turning you down. I thought you were a diamond in the rough. But now, I see you're just a freeloader who survives off others. Even if I stay single forever, I still wouldn't settle for a loser like you. From now on, we will go our separate ways. Please stay away from me. Ignoring Brian's humiliated face, I said to the villagers in a serious tone. Fellow villagers, you have watched me grow up. Everyone knows exactly who I Callista am. Today is the big day that Brian and I are breaking off our engagement. Everyone's visit is not in vain. Let's prepare a little wine to celebrate. If there is a young man of marriageable age who can support a wife and children and does not like to live off others, please help me pay more attention. While saying that I don't like to be a gigolo, I looked at Brian with contempt. I am a straightforward person. When I love, I can compromise. When I no longer love, no one should force me to suffer. In this life, I have made up my mind to sever this toxic fate with Brian. Even if he dies in front of me, I wouldn't bother to look at him again. Everyone stared at each other, waiting for Brian's reaction, but I had already turned around and was prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, Brian, who always claimed to be a gentleman, actually lost his composure. Callista, you've also learned to play hard to get. Be careful, or you'll regret it, I sneered. A loser who has failed the exam several times is still pretending. He really thinks he's some great talent. Brian now is not cunning. Just a frustrated man who's failed repeatedly. Some naughty children laughed first. Brian's face turned red and twisted. Callista, why are you pretending? You can clearly devote your whole life to me. He quickly interrupted the conversation. But his words made my hair stand on end. Now, nothing has happened yet. Devote my whole life to him? Squeeze out my last drop of blood and tears? That was clearly something from a previous life. Why was he so sure I would give him my all? Looking at his unnatural eyes, I was shocked. Could it be that he was also reborn? I couldn't help but clench my fists tightly, wishing I could smash his ugly face and live a new life. He actually wanted to use me as a stepping stone. What should I pretend for? Do you really think you're so desirable that I'd waste all my efforts on you? I pretended not to hear him clearly and responded sarcastically. Brian smiled like a weasel who had just stolen a chicken and coaxed me. Okay, don't play such boring tricks. Retreat to advance? Be careful, there's a cliff behind you. It'll be too late to regret. Callista, I'll give you one last chance. Don't you really want to marry me? Otherwise, even if you kowtow and apologize, I won't agree. As soon as he finished speaking, I picked up a pile of fresh cow dung from the roadside and smeared it on his mouth. Your mouth is so dirty, go eat. Brian retched and gritted his teeth. Okay, Callista, you're very good. When I become successful in the future and it's someone else standing next to me, don't you dare commit suicide out of regret. At noon, my family held a buffet and invited the villagers to have dinner. My parents are well-known and capable people in the surrounding villages and have always had good relationships with others. After today's meal, those relationships would surely strengthen. During the dinner, two familiar aunts advised me. Callista, Brian is a rare educated person in our village. He may get into university and escape farm life one day. People can be unlucky sometimes. If he fails this year, he might pass next year. Don't look down on poor young men. Help them when they're down. And they'll be good to you in the future. Be obedient. Your aunt will accompany you to apologize to Brian later. You two can talk it out. But I had just seen Brian and Diana, a female educated youth from the city, arguing. It was the same in the previous life. I burned myself to light up Brian's future. But everyone said I had good vision and picked a rich husband. My heart ached. I threw my wine glass to the ground. Even if all the men in the world died, I would never marry Brian. I broke my oath and drank that cup with my body. The scene fell silent until a pretentious voice rang out. Oh, did I come at the wrong time? Did I disturb everyone's mood? It was Brian's mother, an old white lotus who bloomed in 2 lifetimes. As soon as she entered, she squeezed out a few worthless tears and looked aggrieved. The 2 children acted on impulse. Everyone, please don't take it seriously, or I really won't have the face to see my deceased enemies. If I hadn't seen Brian's mother, I would have forgotten the despicable genes passed down from their ancestors. Brian's biological father hanged himself after discovering his wife was having an affair with the team leader and was so angry he couldn't bear it. Now the old white lotus was bringing it up. I'm not afraid of dreaming about ghosts at night. Brian's mother came over and grabbed my arm tightly. Callista, if Brian did anything wrong, just tell me and I'll teach him a lesson. Today is a rare good day. We already had the engagement banquet. Hurry and get the certificate while the staff are still on duty. She pretended to be affectionate and whispered in my ear. Everyone knows about you and Brian. Do you think you'll find a good family after breaking off the engagement? If you're more sensible and help Brian, I'm magnanimous and won't hold today against you. You don't even have a brother to support you. Your reputation is ruined. Even if you get married, you'll be beaten for the rest of your life. Seeing that I didn't respond, she secretly pinched the soft flesh on my arm. The child is so happy she's gone silly. Hurry and give everyone cigarettes and wedding candies. As she said this, she picked up a wine glass. Today is a happy day. I toast everyone. I hope you'll support us. I'll invite you again next year to celebrate my son becoming top scholar. This scene shocked everyone. No wonder Mr. and Mrs. Lee were nowhere to be seen. It turns out Aunt Brian prepared the banquet. Callista, this is your fault. You won't find such a good mother-in-law even with a lantern. Why don't you kowtow and apologize? In my previous life, after marrying into the Brian family, we not only supported Brian's schooling, but even the wedding banquet was paid for by my parents. Brian's mother never appreciated it. She kept muttering about how the money could be better used for Brian's health. Shamelessly, she stuffed all the villagers' gift money into her own pocket and ordered me around. Sometimes I toasted the villagers. Sometimes I handed out candies. I didn't eat a single bite during the entire buffet. When you get married, you must act like you're married. Do you think you can sit there and be served? You must prioritize your mother-in-law and husband in everything. This is a rule passed down for thousands of years. At that time, I didn't know that this was the so-called pua. I was so hungry that I saw stars. But I had to wash several baskets of dirty dishes in the freezing cold river. This was just the beginning of the tragedy. There was no end. I worked to earn work points during the day and caught eels with a flashlight at night to sell for money to support Brian's health. At night, I had to serve Brian's mother when she woke up. Scenes from my past and present lives flashed through my mind. I wished I could sew up her chattering mouth. In her past life, she angered my parents to death, probably because she did too many evil things when she was young. Brian's mother was paralyzed in bed before she was 50. Later, Brian became very successful. Every time he showed signs of wanting to divorce, they were promptly extinguished by Brian's mother. I can't live without Callista. In this life, I will only recognize Callista as my daughter-in-law. If you dare to do anything stupid, I will never be able to close my eyes. At that time, I was so naive that I thought my years of meticulous and personal service had made her completely accept me in her heart. But reality slapped me hard in the face. The last impression I had before I died was Brian, who was rosy with joy because of my service. His mother held Diana's hand affectionately and said, "I'm sorry for you. I have delayed you two destined people." But she really had her own difficulties. Why is life so difficult? At the beginning, I couldn't pay the tuition and needed Callista to earn it. When life got better, I became paralyzed again and needed someone to serve me. So Callista took advantage of me and became my wife, the daughter-in-law of the old Bryan family for 30 years. Fortunately, today things have finally been righted. You two lovers have finally gotten married. On my deathbed, I looked at the 3 generations of grandparents and grandchildren snuggling together. Everyone had unconcealable happiness on their faces. I realized that my life was a complete joke. My poor parents loved the Bryan family so much that they served them all their lives. When they got old, Bryan's mother exposed the truth about my being deceived in front of me. I was so angry that I wanted to jump up and tear them into pieces. But I was powerless. I would like to live my life again and eat their flesh and sleep on their bones. Bryan's mother dared to be arrogant in front of me. I raised my hand and knocked the cup out of her hand. Aunt Bryan, you must have been kicked in the head by a donkey. You can say so much nonsense in broad daylight. Now I have nothing to do with the Bryan family. Aunt Bryan, everyone knows that you are a sick beauty. You take more medicine than food in a year. Bryan can't carry anything on his shoulders or hands. He can't even go out for a few days a year. Where do you get the money to hold the banquet? A word of advice awakened the villagers. And they finally realized what was happening. The tuition fees for Bryan's mother and son had to be borrowed from everywhere. So how could they have money to hold a wedding banquet? Unless the money came from an illegal source? I mercilessly tore off Bryan's mother's facade and sneered. I can afford such a big wedding resignation banquet. So I can afford an extra pair of chopsticks. If you are hungry, just eat more and talk less nonsense. Accustomed to my obedience and fawning in the past, Bryan's mother was struck as if by lightning. She covered her face and sat down on the ground, howling. My life is more bitter than that of Coptis Chinensis. The new daughter-in-law rides on my head before she even enters the house. The daughter-in-law raised by my own daughter treats me like this. People who want to climb up the social ladder have to humiliate us poor orphans and widows like this. I really have no face to live. She rolled on the ground crying. An inexplicable shudder came from the depths of my soul. Bryan's mother in the previous life was also like this, always finding fault with eggs, and would throw a tantrum and try to commit suicide if she was not satisfied. But now I will not compromise anymore. I picked up the dirty water for washing vegetables and poured it all over her head. Bryan's mother screamed and covered her chest in panic. At this time, Bryan stepped into the door, his eyes red, and he raised his foot and kicked me in the stomach. You want to die? How dare you hit your mother-in-law? How could your parents give birth to such an uneducated thing like you? I poured the chili oil on the table over his head. Bryan, don't come here to act crazy. Your ears are stuffed with donkey hair. And you can't understand human language. I would rather marry a pig or a dog than a beast like you. Marriage is free. If you continue to shamelessly call yourself my mother-in-law, I will call the police. It was the coldest time of the year. Bryan's mother was shivering with cold. Her eyes vicious. Callista, I gave you a chance. But you didn't cherish it. Today, let everyone see you clearly. Folks, I didn't tell the truth before because of my son's face. In fact, it was Callista who caused my son to fail the exam. She came to my house in the middle of the night the day before the college entrance examination to seduce him. My son is a hot-blooded young man. Even if he didn't open the door, he was aroused by her and couldn't sleep well. That's why Callista is wild and uneducated. No matter the era, gossip is the hottest. The scene was noisy. The villagers looked at each other with strange eyes and chattered non-stop. It's easy to spread rumors, but it's hard to refute them. Besides, it's really hard to prove your innocence in an era without surveillance. They still didn't let me go after living a new life. I stared into Bryan's eyes as if I wanted to see through his soul. Bryan, do you dare to touch your conscience and tell everyone whether what your mother said is true? The female compatriots also looked anxious. Bryan, tell us quickly whether what your mother said is true. This is a matter of life and death. Don't dare to talk nonsense. Even if the marriage fails, you can't be angry and ruin Callista's life. Bryan's eyes flashed with a trace of guilt, but he still said word by word, Callista, you should be bold and responsible. But if you get a marriage certificate with me, Seducing before marriage will not be a big mistake. I can discipline you well after we get married." Everyone was moved by his serious expression. For a moment, men were silent, and women were in tears. But Brian's mother kept sneering. "Seeing one cockroach means there are already 10,000 cockroaches. Who knows if Callista has hooked up with other people? Fellow villagers, you must help me pay more attention in the future. Keep an eye on Callista to prevent her from hooking up with other men when my son is not home." Brian grabbed my wrist tightly and said, "Callista, I don't care about the past. I can give you one last chance to start a new life." At that moment, there was a roar of a car engine, and the door was pushed open. The corners of my mouth rose. "You are the ones who should be ashamed of being human." A police car stopped in front of my house, and several uniformed policemen surrounded it. My parents walked in, and my mother said, "My daughter, Mom's back. Not too late, right?" I patted my mother's shoulder comfortingly and smiled. "Not too early, not too late, just right." The police looked at me and said, "Comrade, you have clues about the suspect." Everyone was puzzled, but Brian's face darkened, and his lips moved slightly as he muttered, "How could it be possible?" That day, it was clear. He took a step toward me, grabbed my arm tightly, and said, "Callista, let's stop making trouble, okay? Let's go get the marriage certificate now. I swear to be with you forever in this life." Before I could respond, a policeman pulled him aside and said, "Hey, you dare act like a hooligan in front of the police? Is there no law? I think you look like a habitual offender." Another officer added, "Yes, he has the same build as the man who ran away from the firewood pile without pants that day." Everyone turned to look at me, waiting for my response. I didn't keep them in suspense and told the truth. It turned out someone did cheat that night. But it wasn't me. In my previous life, I found out before I died that the day before the college entrance exam, Diana spent the whole night in the firewood pile at the village entrance to help Brian relieve his tension. Unfortunately, at dawn, he was caught by a police team searching for suspects. Brian didn't even bother to pull up his pants and fled. In a panic, he naturally failed the exam the next day. In this life, with this key information, I asked my parents to go to the police station to report the crime in advance, saying they had key information about the suspect, hoping the police could rid the people of this evil. My parents set out before dawn and finally brought the police to the village. A policeman explained, "We passed through your village on a mission that day, but an accident happened during the arrest. Two young people suddenly ran into the encirclement, ignoring everything in the firewood pile, which alarmed the criminals. Several of our comrades were injured as a result, and there was an uproar at the scene." Another villager shouted, "Not only are you shameless, but you also caused the police to be injured. Didn't Aunt Brian just say Callista came to seduce him? Brian went to the firewood pile by himself and wasn't home at all." Brian hesitated for a long time without saying a word. Brian's mother quickly stood up to stop everyone, saying, "Nonsense. Catch the thief with the stolen goods. Catch the adulterer with the couple. Even the police can't slander my Brian without evidence. It was Callista who came to our house in the middle of the night to cause trouble. And when she was rejected, she got angry and called the police." The villagers began to waver again, as they instinctively doubted a woman's chastity when romantic rumors surfaced. A policeman shouted, "Our comrades saw it clearly. It was Brian who fled that day. The clues provided by Comrade Callista are very effective. It was not a false alarm." Brian's mother jumped 3 feet high and yelled, "My son is a scholar. A future college student. You're helping that little liar tell lies. She's not afraid of being struck by lightning." The police took out a dozen photos from a briefcase and said, "We always rely on evidence when handling cases. These are photos taken that night. The birthmark on the buttocks is very clear. A comparison will reveal the truth." I stared at Brian, who was looking down at his toes, and said, "A real man should take responsibility for his actions. But you try to pin the blame on me. You have a dirty mind and think others are like you. You want to ruin my reputation in public. You're clearly having an affair with others. Yet you still force me to marry you. What kind of wicked heart do you have? You're worse than scum." Brian's mother shielded him like a hen, her eyes welling with tears. But a policeman raised his hand to stop her and said, Facts speak louder than words. A check of the birthmark will make it clear. Then the police looked at Brian's mother suspiciously and said, "It was you who showed us the way that day, wasn't it? I was wondering why you led us farther away. It turns out you're mother and son." The police quickly restrained Brian's struggling mother. "Although you covered your head with a scarf that day, you were wearing this dress. You deliberately misled us, interfering with the police investigation. What was your intention?" Brian's mother, abandoning her usual arrogance, shrank back into the crowd and said, "It's not me. You're slandering me. You're defaming the masses. I'll go to the county to sue you." She thought the police would back down when faced with her tantrum. But they responded, "Great, we'll summon you to the station to explain everything clearly." At that moment, someone in the crowd exclaimed, "I got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and saw a white shadow flash by. I thought it was a ghost. But it was Brian's bare butt. It's really quite white." Another villager added, "I heard Aunt Brian talking outside in the middle of the night and got scolded by some woman." The police comrades served the people and finally cleared my name. Everything was revealed, and their dark, ugly hearts were exposed to the public. I picked up the broom from the yard, pointed it at Brian, and said, "I'll beat you to death. You shameless bastard." The shocked villagers rushed forward. Brian's mother pulled him away, and they ran with their heads down, cursing, "You blind fool, you don't marry my son, a rising star and top scholar. How much virtue did your ancestors accumulate to have the chance to join our family? You'll be a rural woman chopping firewood for the rest of your life. Without my support, I want to see how you take off on your own." The next morning, I packed my luggage and walked to the village entrance. In my previous life, I wasted my entire life being the woman behind Brian. In fact, my grades were much better than his. But to save his face, I tore up my admission letter again and again. In this life, I won't be bound by anyone and will soar against the wind. My parents fully support my dreams and encourage me to pursue them. On the carriage into the city, I met Brian, his mother, and Diana sitting behind them. The three sat opposite me, their eyes dazed, as if they had just come from the police station, while Brian's mother diligently stuffed freshly peeled eggs into Diana's hands. She curled her lips and sneered, implying that some unpresentable people really think they're something. They can't find a husband in the village, so they go to the city to cause trouble again. They don't even stop to reflect and look at themselves carefully. It's too late to regret now. Not every cat or dog can enter the gates of our Brian family. The carriage turned, and Diana cried out, bumping into Brian's arms, looking at me provocatively, just like countless times in my previous life. "You are Callista, truly as the name suggests. Unsophisticated. A mud leg is a mud leg. And the name you were given carries a fishy smell. In my previous life, on Brian's and my wedding night, Diana rushed in with a workbook and insisted on discussing difficult problems with Brian. She raised her chin with her nose to the sky, not even bothering to look me in the eye. You are the Callista who is ignorant of the times, shameless, and insisted on marrying brother Brian. There's no mirror at home, so you can hold your urine and take a good look at yourself. If poor brother Brian kisses you, he'll probably have nightmares for several nights." She was like a proud princess, wearing a fashionable blouse, a sky blue hairpin, and exuding the pleasant scent of cold cream. But I was wearing clothes full of patches, my face covered with black dust from the stove. I was like Lu Laolao meeting Lin Daiyu, feeling ashamed of myself and unable to speak. The sky blue hairpin on her head looked very familiar. I had seen it in Brian's bag. I was happily looking forward to the first gift he would give me. But who would have thought it would appear on Diana's head? Brian rushed over and protected Diana behind him, as if I were some terrible, dirty thing, and there was nothing I could say to her. Be careful not to get stained by her earthy smell. He turned his head and looked at me impatiently. What are you standing there for? Go make Diana some egg tea. It's such a hot day. Good for cooling down. Their laughter and joy came from the new house covered with red double happiness. I could only stand in the yard, enduring mosquito bites and looking up at the stars in the sky. Callista, are you dead? The wormwood burned out, and you didn't even know to add more. They were so self-righteous. I could only swallow all the grievances with tears. This was just the beginning. In the following 30 years, they trampled on my dignity again and again under the banner of friendship beyond gender. I was about to speak up and fight back, but the aunties in the carriage couldn't stand it anymore and stood up to support me. What's wrong with being a peasant? Did peasants kill your whole family? If you're so great, don't eat the food grown by peasants. Oh my, it's so embarrassing. You tried to throw yourself into a man's arms in broad daylight. You're more shameless than a city wall. By the way, the person who got into the firewood pile with Brian was you. You still have the nerve to show your face? Why not just buy a piece of tofu and end it all? Diana was so angry that her face contorted. She stopped pretending to be weak. You uneducated country bumpkins deserve to dig in the dirt your whole lives. You're just envious and jealous. I interrupted her directly. The chairman called on revolutionary youth to come to the countryside. Yet you keep calling them country bumpkins. Your ideological motives are highly problematic. Diana's face turned pale, and she shuddered violently. You, an unwanted abandoned woman, don't bother me. If it weren't for your constant pestering, Brother Brian would have been admitted to university and become a city dweller. Upon hearing this, the aunties and sisters grew even angrier. They have dirty minds and see everything as dirty. You were pulling and tugging beside the ditch that day, and my Erniu saw it clearly. Yes, my Dianabao also saw them doing something shady in the production team's warehouse. Oh, the village children are going to be corrupted by them. You still have the nerve to propose to our Callista? It's disgusting. You two dogs are a perfect match. Don't come out to disgust others. Diana was so aggrieved that her eyes filled with tears. She shook Brian's arm vigorously. Brother Brian, look at them. Why don't you say something? A gleam flashed in Brian's eyes. He grabbed my wrist tightly and whispered, Callista, are you back too? His pupils constricted, like a hungry wolf ready to devour its prey. Yes, he must have noticed my change. I am no longer the Callista who could be summoned and dismissed at will. I stared into his eyes, and a big smile spread across my face. Brian, you've failed the exams repeatedly. Is there something wrong with your brain? Stop spreading rumors and disrupting revolutionary production. I shook off Brian's wrist and patted my sleeves in disdain. I had experienced so many ups and downs in my last life. How could I fall into his little trap now? I will tear off all his pride and trample him hard in the mire. My answer must have been beyond his expectations. Brian grew angry and snorted coldly. Whatever. It's hard to persuade you with kind words. You damned ghost. You're destined not to be the wife of an official that everyone admires in this life. From now on, everything about you has nothing to do with me. I want you to know the difference between heaven and earth. You're destined to spend your whole life looking up at me. Disappointment, despair, madness. These are the retribution you deserve. I have never been the one who did wrong. If there's any retribution, it should fall on him. The carriage arrived at the station. Brian jumped off with his mother and Diana and turned away. I grabbed him by the back of the neck. Callista, it's too late for you to regret now. I sneered and interrupted his barking. You haven't paid the fare yet. People who are used to living off others are reluctant to take a penny out of their own pockets. When they saw me in the carriage, they subconsciously expected me to pay the bill. What are you paying for? You should pay for my son's talent. Brian's mother pushed me impatiently. The carriage owner hasn't spoken yet. What's it to you? If you want to talk to my son, just say it. Don't make up these roundabout excuses. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly as I looked her up and down. The fare is indeed none of my business. But the engagement is cancelled. You two are still wearing the clothes I made for you. That's not appropriate, is it? Brian's mother screamed. How shameless. You have the nerve to take back things you gave away? I tore her clothes off directly. Diana came forward to stop me. But I threw her aside. Your whole family has taken advantage of me. And you still have the nerve to leave? It's only natural for me to reclaim what's mine. Aunts and ladies, I think their used things are unlucky. If you don't mind, take whatever you like. By the way, the clothes and hairpins on Diana were also bought by Brian with my money. As soon as I spoke, everyone was so excited that they surrounded them instantly. People used to farm work had plenty of strength. No matter how hard they struggled, it was useless. Soon, The three of them were stripped naked like bald chickens. Brian's mother, at her age, had nothing to be shy about. She didn't care about the 2 lumps of flesh on her chest. She tried to make up for the loss. But she was scratched by everyone and became a bloody mess. They accused her of pretending to be pitiful to seduce men all day. Every year, they ate dozens of kilograms of my family's food for free. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Only you could raise such a shameless son. Brian was unforgiving and angrily scolded everyone, calling them unreasonable shrews. The women gave him a taste of their fury, clawing at him like the 9-yin white bone claws. He covered his face in pain and shouted, "You're committing a crime. I'm the future top scorer in the college entrance exam. Without me, who will build bridges and roads for you? Who will lead you out of poverty and into prosperity? You're clueless and digging your own graves." Brian's mother pounded the ground, her fat trembling, and wailed, "This little wretch turned hatred into love and forced marriage in the street. This is blatant hooliganism. I'll call the police and have them arrest you and shoot you 100 times." Brian's eyes nearly popped out as he yelled, "Callista, ignorance is dangerous. You're robbing us. Street robbery is a serious crime. And you're part of a gang. No one will escape." Smirking with satisfaction, Brian glanced at me and said, "Callista, you've hurt me this badly. All past debts are settled. Even if you break your head today, I'll never forgive you." But I didn't bow my head or beg for mercy. Instead, I held my head high and said, "It's just a creditor collecting a debt. No one can fault me." Brian's mother acted like a rogue, spouting nonsense. "What's yours is yours just because you say so? If you're so bold, make it agree with you. How could your clothes end up on us? You've lost your mind." Diana, on the side, snapped out of it and cried crocodile tears, saying, "I don't know about their affairs. But I have nothing to do with you. Boo-hoo, I'll report you to the police and have you thrown in jail." A well-dressed old man passing by looked at me sternly and said, "Comrade, can you prove these clothes are yours? If not, you'll have to go to the police station today." I remained calm, never fighting a battle unprepared. With a sneer, I pulled out a stack of yellowed receipts from my pocket and unfolded them before everyone. These were purchase certificates for fabrics from the Supply and Marketing Cooperative, clearly stating the color and purchase date of each piece. Then I showed the lining of the cuffs, where I had embroidered secret marks on every piece of clothing I made myself. Brian's mother lunged to grab them, but the old man stepped forward, pinched the cuffs, and inspected them. Sure enough, a faded, plum character appeared. Brian's face turned as red as a pot's bottom. He was petty, calculating even the smallest things. I said, "Your intentions in approaching me were never pure. You clearly wanted to use me to get ahead." To maintain his pitiful dignity, Brian always used sweet words to indirectly beg for things. "Only the clothes you make are the most comfortable. Wearing them, I feel so happy I could fly. I'll only wear clothes you make and eat meals you cook for the rest of my life." I always racked my brain to meet his demands, secretly embroidering my name on the corners of the clothes as a hidden sign of love. I kept the purchase receipts intact, not for debt collection but to commemorate our love. I thought he saw me as his only lover, but he only saw me as the perfect nanny. That unintentional act had such a miraculous effect. The evidence was undeniable, leaving no room for argument. Brian, stripped bare like a boiled chicken, could only swallow his pride and admit it. His mother wanted to resort to her usual shrewish tactics, but I smiled gently and said, "I hear work-style issues are scrutinized when applying to university." Brian's mother had no choice but to glare, cover her mouth, and play dumb. Our commotion drew a crowd, with more people gathering to watch. Some clever vendors even started selling melon seeds on the spot. Everyone watched the drama unfold and shared their opinions. "Oh, it feels like the only bitter tea seeds left on me are mine," one said. Diana, covering her face, sobbed loudly. "Brother Brian, why don't you say something? Are you just going to let her bully me like this?" Seeing the once powerful Brian speechless, Diana couldn't handle the shift. As they tugged and pulled, a familiar voice rang out, "Diana, you went to the countryside just to have an affair. You're sabotaging socialist construction and bringing shame to the city. Our village doesn't need a rat like you." Diana swayed, nearly collapsing. Village chief, I didn't. Let me explain. Moments ago, she looked like a proud, noble intellectual, but now her hair was disheveled, and she resembled a madwoman. The village chief waved impatiently, and several tattered clothes and a pair of broken shoes with exposed toes were thrown at Diana. Ignoring the filth, she hurriedly put them on. Several militiamen escorted her out. Brian reached out but pulled back, not daring to intervene. Bah, what kind of man are you? Turns out you've always loved yourself the most. Brian looked crazed, his eyes red as he glared at me fiercely. Callista, you blind fool who can't tell gold from jade. I'll make you regret today's actions for the rest of your life. Just wait, I'll make your life worse than death. The village chief snorted coldly. Take him away. Several militiamen dragged him off. Brian struggled, looking back with eyes as venomous as a snake's. Callista, we'll see. I brushed my sleeves and said lightly. Fine. I rented a house in the county town and studied hard day and night. I heard Brian's mother went to my door daily to yell and curse, claiming I failed to force her son into marriage and framed him. No one in the village sided with her. They all said only someone like Brian's mother could raise a shameless son like Brian. Yet she cursed the entire village without remorse. You tactless fools. When my son succeeds, I'll crush you like dead ants. And even kowtowing for mercy won't help. Her daydreams were shattered soon after. To escape the charge of hooliganism, Brian and Diana, now enemies, were forced to marry reluctantly. I made time to attend their wedding banquet. Diana went all out, forcing Brian to hold a lavish wedding befitting a city dweller's status. A wife isn't as good as a concubine. A concubine isn't as good as stealing. And stealing isn't as good as what you can't have. Brian no longer had the patience or tolerance of the past. They quarreled in front of the whole village. Brian's mother, who always doted on her son, stood firm and slapped Diana several times with a backhand. Diana was defeated and fell to the ground, clutching her stomach. A pool of bright red blood flowed from her body. It seems the firewood pile of the two lovers was not in vain. Their love blossomed and bore fruit. But unfortunately, the fruit fell before it ripened. Seeing her eldest grandson slip away unexpectedly, Brian's mother, fearing gossip from the villagers, turned her head dramatically and rushed toward the crowd. I subtly extended my foot. Brian's mother collided with the corner of the wall she hadn't anticipated. Her head split open, bleeding, and she fainted. Later, Brian's mother survived but became feeble-minded, unable to care for herself. If unattended, she'd wander into the pigsty and play with the pigs. Diana, having lost much blood, was half dead. 2 patients lay on the same kong. The family had no money for medical treatment, let alone food for the next meal. Seeing through the true character of Brian and his mother, the villagers, unlike before, offered no help. Brian was so anxious his eyebags seemed to droop to his chin. I don't know where he got the news, but he intercepted me when I returned to the village. Callista, please help me for the sake of our past friendship, he pleaded. I rolled my eyes. Friendship? You and I have none. Only hatred. Brian, with an unshaven beard and clothes reeking of unwashed sweat, looked like a homeless vagrant. Callista, if you help me, I'll never forget your kindness. I'll surely be admitted to university this year. Though your future is bright, I don't mind your lack of education and will marry you. If I break this oath, may I die miserably, he swore, kneeling and begging. Several hornets flew over and stung Brian, who was blocking my path. He yelped in pain. That's what you get for lying. Don't make empty oaths, or you'll face divine punishment. I sneered. Did you daydream so much your brain broke? To get into university, you need to take the exam. Busy with your foolish mother and half-dead lover. Did you forget the college entrance exam ended yesterday? I strode forward, ignoring Brian's cries. Crying is useless. Who made my old hen eat an overdose of Chinese herbal medicine that induces sleep the day before the exam? And who made her appear before the starving Brian? Hungry Brian devoured the whole chicken and slept for 2 days, perfectly missing the annual college entrance exam. Brian's funeral and my graduation banquet fell on the same day. Villagers said he went mad, shouting about resetting everything and starting over. He slit his mother's and wife's throats. then jumped into the village pond. It took 2 days for his body to float up, disgusting. He polluted the village's good water before dying. A blessed woman won't enter a house of misfortune. Callista, your good days are ahead, the villagers said. Raising my glass, I addressed them. Today is my celebration for university admission. Everyone, eat and drink happily. Let's not mention those unfortunate souls. Laughter filled the air. Whether Brian could start over doesn't matter. I know my journey is just beginning. And Brian was merely a stepping stone. I'm waiting.